Katie. We have Nancy's Mysterious Letter. We are on Chapter 18, Shakespearean Puzzle. Hannah Gruen explained to Nancy that after church she had taken some food to poor Ira Nixon. He was in a bad state, she reported. The theft occurred late last night. Edgar came there and pounded on the door until Ira let him in. He never so much as asked how Ira was feeling or when he was going back to work or anything. That dreadful Edgar started right in demanding money. You mean part of the inheritance? No. Edgar said Ira had always been a miser. So a miser is someone who has money but doesn't like to spend it. And he was sure he had money hidden in the house. When Ira wouldn't answer, Edgar started hunting for some himself. Nancy was shocked at the story. She asked if Edgar had found any money. That's the dreadful part of it, Mrs. Gruen went on. Ira did have some in the house, lots of it. He was very foolish to not have put it in the bank. How did Edgar get a hold of the money? Nancy queried. He stole it, the housekeeper said. Edgar Nixon practically tore the house apart. He ripped sofa cushions, bed pillows, and emptied every drawer in the house. How dreadful, Nancy exclaimed. Do you know how much money he got? The answer stunned her. $1,000. That's a lot of money. Oh no, Nancy cried out. Poor Ira. How is he feeling when you left him? Pretty bad, Mrs. Gruen replied. I warmed up the food I took and made him eat some of it. This quieted him a bit, but I kept telling him he should notify the police. He refuses to and wouldn't let me. Nancy was incensed, so she's really upset. But she could see that Ira, despite his family misfortune, did not want any unfavorable publicity about his half-brother. After all, they did have the same mother. I thought I'd better call you, Nancy, and tell you right away, Mrs. Gruen said. What do you think should be done? Nancy asked the housekeeper if she had spoken to Mr. Drew about it. No, I haven't had a chance. After church, your father went out to the country to see a client. He was planning to have dinner there. For several seconds, Nancy sat lost in thought. Finally, Mrs. Gruen said, Nancy, are you still there? Yes, I'm just thinking. Wait until I get back before doing anything. We girls are heading home this afternoon. She quickly told Hannah Gruen what had happened at Emerson, and that actually she was no closer to finding either Edgar Nixon or Nancy Smith Drew than she had been days ago. Well, Hannah dear, I guess I'd better hang up now. Ned and the others are waiting for me to have lunch. I'll see you around supper time. At the lunch table, Nancy told her friends about the latest twist in the mystery. Her friends were dismayed, and Dave remarked, Edgar Nixon is one of the slipperiest crooks I ever heard of, Nancy said. Before we girls leave Emerson, I'd like to call on Mrs. Roderick once more. It's just possible that she had heard from Nancy Smith Drew, but hadn't bothered to telephone me about it. Bess and George offered to do Nancy's packing while she was gone. In a little while, she and Ned rode off in the convertible. When Mrs. Roderick opened her front door, she exclaimed, You're just the people I wanted to see. I was going to call you, Nancy, but I couldn't remember which fraternity house you said you were in. You have news of Miss Drew? Nancy asked. Indeed I do. Please come inside and sit down. I'm so weak from the shock I've had that my knees are still wobbly. They all went into the living room and sat down. Mrs. Roderick explained that she taught a Sunday school class and then went to church service afterward. I thought for a change I'd stay out to dinner, so I went to a tea room that's open on Sunday. This was the reason I didn't get home until a little while ago. So far, there was nothing about Mr. Roderick's story to upset her. Nancy and Ned waited patiently for her to go on. As soon as I came into the house, I went upstairs to change my clothes. To get into my bedroom, I had to pass Miss Drew's door. When I glanced into the room, I saw something on the bureau. This seemed funny to me, so I went in to look at it. Mrs. Roderick went on to say that lying on the bureau was 2 weeks' room rent, but no explanation by Miss Drew as to why she had left it. I thought I'd better investigate to see if her clothes and jewelry and everything were gone. Sure enough, they were. There's no question but that she moved out. Nancy asked Mrs. Roderick if Miss Drew had left any kind of message. Oh, yes, the woman said, but it didn't say anything personal. It wasn't even addressed to me. In fact, it wasn't really a note, just a lot of words scribbled on a piece of paper. Neither Nancy nor Ned was sure this was the case, but hesitated to ask to see the note. You know how eager we are to find Miss Drew, Nancy said. If you have no idea where she's going, do you mind if I look around her room for a clue? No, go ahead, Mrs. Roderick said, and yet led the young people upstairs. She watched in interest as the couple made a thorough search of the place. Finally, they admitted defeat. Nancy turned to Mrs. Roderick. Are you sure that Miss Drew came here herself? The woman looked startled. Then she answered slowly, No, I'm not. And nobody else around here would have seen who it was. We're church-going folks on this street, so everyone would have been out. Then it's just possible, Nancy said, that someone else could have used Miss Drew's key and come in. I suppose so, Mrs. Roderick agreed. Suddenly, she turned and looked straight at the couple. Are you two detectives? She asked. The young people began to laugh. Then Ned said, I'm not, but Nancy Drew is the best girl detective in the whole world. Don't you believe him, Nancy said quickly. I have solved some mysteries, I'll admit, and I enjoy it, but I'm sure there are many other girls who could do the same. Mrs. Roderick was silent for a few moments. Then she said, I think I'd better show you that paper with the funny notes on it. I put it in my room. See what you can make out of the thing. She went to get it and soon returned, holding a sheet of white paper on which several verses were written in small handwriting. Nancy and Ned read them quickly. These are quotations from Shakespeare, Nancy told Mrs. Roderick. Shakespeare? Then I suppose that's not so funny, the woman remarked, since Miss Drew was coaching the Shakespearean play. Ned requested that Nancy read the various lines aloud. She did so, pausing between each quotation and puckering her brow. They said, My mind is troubled like the fountain stirred, and I myself see not the bottom of it. Striving to better, oft we mar what's well. We that are true lovers run into strange capers. Prosperity's the very bond of love, so we profess. Ourselves to be the slaves of chance, better 3 hours too soon than a minute too late. Travelers must be content. It is the stars above us, that govern our conditions. When Nancy finished reading, Mrs. Roderick remarked, If that was meant to be a message to me, I can't make head or tail of it. Ned admitted that he could not fathom the meaning of the conglomeration of quotes, so the group of quotes. Since Nancy had said nothing, he asked her, Have you any idea what this means? Nancy smiled. Yes, I think I know. Ooh, I'll have to find out what they mean.